So now that we've learned how to navigate through Fusion 360, let's start a new design. And to do this, I'm going to go over here to this plus sign at the top of my screen, and that will start a new design. You can see now we have multiple tabs open. I'm going to edit this untitled design. And so the first thing I'm going to do is create a new sketch, and I'm going to sketch on this front plane. And the first thing I want you to do is select your rectangle tool, click a random spot over here, let go and drag your mouse, and click again. And then to exit my rectangle tool, I can right click and hit OK, I can right click and hit cancel, or I can go down to my keyboard and hit escape. And so now I don't have my rectangle tool selected, so I can click on my previous rectangle and edit it. Now you'll notice that it's completely blue. What this means is the rectangle is not fully constrained. I can change its size and its location. Now, it's proper practice to fully constrain sketches when you are 3D modeling, meaning you tell the sketch to be permanent. You tell it to be locked in place and what size it's going to be. And so let's learn how to do that. And the first thing I want to do is I want to go up to my constraints and I want to find my coincident constraint. Now, if you hover over a constraint long enough, it'll actually define what the constraint does for you. But let's select the coincident constraint. Essentially, all it does is it tells 2 points to be the same point. And so I'm going to select the bottom left corner of my rectangle and the origin of my sketch. And I'm going to tell them to be the same point. And then I'm going to right click and hit OK to exit my coincident constraint. And I can start playing with my rectangle tool again. Now, you'll notice 2 of the lines have turned black and 2 have stayed blue. There's a very good reason for that. I've constrained these 2 lines to be stuck to this point. But I've put no such constraints on these 2 lines. I can change where this point goes. I can change where these lines are. I can change the sizes of these lines. And so blue lines represent not constrained, and black lines represent constrained. And so to finish constraining the sketch, I'm going to tell it how big it's going to be. And so if I go to my dimension tool, I can select the bottom and the top of this square and click. And now I can type in some measurement. Now you'll notice that it's being measured in millimeters. I'm going to go ahead and leave whatever dimension I have and hit enter. And I'm going to change my measurements from millimeters to inches. And so to do this, I'm going to right click and hit cancel to get out of my dimension tool and go over here to document settings. And if I hover over my units, you'll see there's a little edit function. I'm going to click on this and it's going to open up this change active units bar. I'm going to switch from millimeters to inches and hit OK. And so now my measurements are in inches instead of millimeters. And if I click on this, it'll go back to the original measurement it was in. I'm going to change this to 1.5 and just hit enter on the keyboard. And you'll see now it's measured in inches. And you'll notice something else. We've now turned another line black. But we still have one more blue line. And of course we do, because we can still change the location of this line. It's not constrained yet. And so to do that, I'm going to go back to my dimension tool. And I'm going to click on these 2 lines to measure my right line from my left. And I'm going to tell this to also be 1.5 inches and hit enter on my keyboard. And so now I have a fully constrained sketch with a perfect 1.5 by 1.5 square. And so now that it's fully constrained, I'm going to go ahead and finish my sketch and find my extrude feature in my ribbon. Now I can click and drag this square either direction to extrude it out. I'm going to go ahead and extrude it backwards, and I'm going to give it a distance of 1.5 to make this a perfect cube. And let's actually add some features to this cube. And so I'm going to left click on my top face and hit create sketch. And you'll notice now I'm looking at my top face as opposed to the previous isometric face. And so on this top face, I'm going to select my circle tool and I'm going to draw myself a circle in the middle of this square face. And so I'm going to click, let go, and drag, and make sure not to click again. And you'll notice that I can drag this bigger or smaller, but it's asking for a dimension. If I just hit 1 on my keyboard, it'll automatically type in that dimension. And then I'm going to hit enter on my keyboard, and now I have a 1-inch diameter circle. Now, you'll notice that it's still blue, and of course it's still blue. I can still move this sketch around, so we're not fully constrained. And actually, there's another way to tell if this sketch is fully constrained. I can open up my sketches in my browser, and you can see that I am still editing my second sketch. My first sketch has a lock on it. That means it's fully constrained. My second sketch is still editable, meaning I can still change the dimensions. And what are the dimensions I can change in this sketch? Well, this circle can move left and right, which is 1 degree of freedom, and it can move up and down, which is a 2nd degree of freedom. I want to lock it directly in the center of this rectangle. And to do this, I'm going to go to my dimension tool, and I'm going to select the left side of this square face, and then select the center of this circle. And I'm going to drag my dimension up and click. I want it to be directly in the center of the square, which means halfway across. Now, you might be able to do that math in your head, but in case you can't, Fusion 360 will actually do it for you. And so what I'm going to do is, since I know from left to right this square is 1.5 in width, and I know I want it to be centered, I'm going to type in a width of 1.5 divided by 2, or 1/2 of the total width, and hit enter. And you'll see that Fusion will actually do the math for you. I'm going to go ahead and hit escape on my keyboard to exit my dimension feature. And I want to look at this circle again. You'll notice that it's still blue. We gave it a dimension to tell it where it goes, and it's still not fully constrained. And if you think about it, we cannot move this circle left and right. We can only move it up and down now. And that makes sense because I haven't told it where it needs to be in the Y direction, giving it a degree of freedom in the Y direction. So to fix this, I'm going to reselect my dimension tool. I'm going to click on the center of my circle and the bottom of this square. And I'm also going to tell this to be 0.75, or halfway across the square in the up and down direction. And I'll hit enter on my keyboard. And now you'll see that this circle changes to black, and there is a lock next to my sketch 2, meaning it is fully constrained. And so I'm going to finish my sketch, hit my home button on my view cube, and I'm going to hit extrude. I'm going to select my circle. Now I could go up, but actually I want to go in the downward direction. I'm going to change this from a join to a cut. What's the difference between a join and a cut? A join adds to your shape. A cut cuts out of your shape, and I'm going to drag my arrow down in the opposite direction. I could give it some dimension, but instead of giving it a distance dimension, I'm going to change it to all. What does that mean? Well, it means my circle is going to extrude cut all the way through the shape that it's cutting out of. If I hit OK and I check it, you can see that I've cut a complete hole out of this cube. Let's actually practice that again. I'm going to select my front face, and I'm going to go to Create Sketch. And I'm going to draw another circle. And this time I'm going to click, drag, and click again, and not add the dimension to my circle while I'm building it. And so I'm going to right click and hit OK. And I'm going to play with this circle for a second. Since I didn't add a dimension to it, I can change its size. Since I didn't tell it a location dimension, I can change its location. Now, earlier I told you it's proper practice to fully dimension any sketch. But you don't have to fully dimension it to extrude a sketch. So for example, if I finish this sketch and I hit extrude, you can see I can add to this shape or cut out of it however I want. But again, it's proper practice to have all your sketches fully dimensioned. And so I want to go back into the sketch. Now, you don't want to create a new sketch when editing an old one. If you create a new sketch on this face, I can't edit this circle. I can't do anything to it. And that's because this circle is inside a different sketch. And so I'm going to finish this. I'm going to delete my sketch 4. And I'm going to, instead of adding a new sketch, I'm going to edit my previous sketch that I didn't finish. So I'll right click on sketch 3 and go down to Edit Sketch. And I'm going to add a dimension to this circle. And I'm not going to tell this circle to be 1 inch. This time instead I'm going to change it to 1.2 inches in diameter. And so now you'll see that this circle has a dimension, but it is not fully constrained. We can change its location, but we can't change its size. And so let's add that location dimension as well. And actually, instead of using our dimension tool, let me show you a different way to fully constrain this in the X and the Y direction. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Create, and I'm going to select my point tool. And I'm going to add 2 points to this square face. I'm going to find the center of this top edge. And so to do this, I'm going to hover this point over the square face until you see this little triangle here. What that'll tell me is that is the center of this line. I'm going to click and put a point there. And then I'm also going to find the center of this edge as well. And so I'm just going to drag until I see a triangle. Now I know I'm at the center of this edge as well. I'm going to draw a point there. I'm going to exit my point tool. And I'm going to tell this circle to align to these 2 points using a new type of constraint, our horizontal and our vertical constraint. And so I'll click on this constraint. I will select the center of my circle, and I'm going to tell it to align vertically with this point. And so now it's stuck. If I right click and hit OK, I can move this circle up and down, but it is stuck vertically. It is constrained vertically to this top point. So I'm going to reselect my horizontal and vertical constraint. I'm going to select the center point and tell it to always be horizontal with this point. And so you'll see now my circle is fully constrained. It can't move left and right. It is constrained to this point, and it can't move up and down. It is constrained to this point. And so I'm going to right click and hit OK. And I'm going to finish my sketch. And I'm also going to extrude cut this hole. I'm going to drag it in, change the distance to all, and hit OK. And so now I have 2 big holes in the middle of my shape. Let's add one more hole, but this time let's mix it up a little bit. Instead of just doing a circular hole, I'm going to click on this face, go to New Sketch. I'm going to draw a smiley face and try to extrude a smiley face hole out of this square face. And so to do this, I'm going to select my line tool. I'm going to click on this face, I'm going to let go of click and drag my mouse straight down, and then click again. Now, I don't want to add to that line. I want to hit escape, click another line, and draw it on the other side of this face. Click down, click again, hit escape, and then I want to add a smiley arc down here. And so to find my arc, I'm going to go to my Create panel and go down to Arc, and I'm going to click on the 3-point arc tool. I'm going to click where I want this arc to start. I'm going to click where I want this arc to finish, and I'm going to drag it down to see where the curve goes. And you'll see now I have just a simple smiley face. And I'm actually not going to worry about constraining this smiley face. This is just a fun, quick design. And I'm going to finish my sketch, and I'm going to try to extrude it. And you'll notice I cannot extrude my smiley face. It's only let me extrude the face of the square itself. But if you think about it, that actually makes sense. I haven't drawn any shapes to extrude. I've just drawn some lines. And so I'm going to go back into this sketch. I'm going to right-click on it and go down to Edit Sketch. And I'm going to make these whole shapes instead of just lines. And so how do I do that? Well, first I'm going to select my line tool, and I'm going to make sure it locks on to these points. And I'm going to click, let go, drag, and click again. Let go, drag, click again. Let go, and lock it on to this point. And it's very important that you lock it on to the previous points. I'm going to do the same thing over here. I'm going to make sure it locks onto that point. I'm going to click and let go of click, drag, and click again. Let go of click, drag, click again, and then let go, drag, and click again. And then I'm going to add this arc as well. I need to finish off this face as well. So I'm going to select my line tool. I'm going to click, drag to the right, and click again. Hit escape, and I want to draw another line over here. Drag it in. Hit escape, and then I want to go to my arc tool. I'm going to go down to arc, select 3-point arc. I'm going to tell this arc where I want it to begin on this point. I want it to end at this point, and I want to drag the curve inward. And now you'll see I have my 3rd shape finished. So I'm going to finish my sketch, go to my home view, and I'm going to hit extrude now. And now you'll see that I can select my faces and drag them in or out, whichever direction I want to go. But you'll notice I can't select this shape to extrude. And so why? Well, if we look back at it, you'll see the reason why is I actually didn't finish off this face. Fusion doesn't know what the shape is going to be if you don't connect all your dots. And so I'm going to go back into the sketch again by double-clicking on it, and I'm going to tell these 2 points to be coincident. I'll click on these 2 points, and now this shape is complete. If I hit Finish Sketch, you'll see that I can extrude all 3 of these shapes. I'm going to cut it all the way through, And you can see that I could just drag it all the way through instead of selecting distance all. But it's good practice to go ahead and tell it to go all the way through. So we're going to go ahead and select that and hit OK. And so now I have this cube shape full of holes. And I encourage you on your third face to do something original. You could just do a smiley face, you could do your initials, or you could draw something else. Just play around with it and try to draw a hole on your third face. And once you're done, make sure you save your document so you don't have to do it again. I'm going to call this Holey Cube.